In this video, we'll try to understand the basic idea behind normalizing flows, a technique used in machine learning to build complex probability distributions by transforming simple ones. In particular, they've been applied in the context of generative modeling, and as we'll see, allow us to construct models with some nice properties. So we'll first examine the basic mathematical framework of normalizing flows, and then we'll take a look at an example paper that uses a normalizing flow to learn a generative model of images. Suppose we have a continuous random variable z with some simple distribution like a spherical Gaussian, allowing for easy sampling and density evaluation. The key idea is to transform this simple distribution with some function f into a more complicated one. We'll formulate f as the composition of a sequence of invertible transformations, so the overall transformation is also invertible. For any x, we have exactly one z that could have been sampled to produce it. So say we ask what the density is of a given x. We might think that we can just say, okay, p of x equals p of f inverse of x. Well, in general, no, this isn't the case. It depends on the behavior of f. So to understand how this works, we can take a look at what's called the change of variables formula. When we have an invertible and differentiable function f mapping from some domain z to domain x, with the distribution p of z defined over domain z, the change of variables formula says that p of x is actually equal to p of f inverse of x multiplied by the magnitude of the determinant of the Jacobian of f inverse. That is, the matrix of all first-order partial derivatives of f inverse. So what does this mean? Well, first, let's replace each f inverse of x with a unique z associated with x. So we're mapping x to its inverse z, evaluating the density of this z under p of z, then multiplying by some scalar magnitude. Now, we know that a valid probability density function must always integrate to 1 over its domain. The magnitude of the Jacobian determinant, which basically indicates how much a transformation locally expands or contracts space, is necessary to ensure that the new density function p of x satisfies this requirement. Let's look at an example when z and x are two-dimensional. The Jacobian of f at a given point in z gives a linear approximation to how x is instantaneously changing with z. So imagine we have a square region of space in z near this point. The partial derivatives in the Jacobian locally define how this region will be transformed by f. For example, let's say we have a 2 for each diagonal term and zeros elsewhere. Locally, this transformation is stretching both dimensions by a factor of 2. Likewise, according to the determinant, the area of the initial square region should increase by a factor of 4. Now, the change of variables formula we had previously contains the determinant of dz dx, the determinant of the inverse Jacobian, which is actually just the reciprocal of the determinant of the original Jacobian. And we know that the total probability of the blue region in z should be equal to the total probability of its image under f. What the change of variables formula is saying is that, in order for this to be true locally, each point in the x region has to have 1/4 as much density as its inverse. Now, we don't actually care whether the Jacobian preserves orientation or not. For example, consider the case where we replace the bottom right term in the Jacobian with -2. We no longer preserve orientation as the region in x flips upside down, and the Jacobian determinant is now -4, not +4, but we only care about its magnitude. The relationship between the densities of points in x and points in z will be the same. So we call our sequence of bijective transformations a normalizing flow. After z is initially sampled, it flows through this sequence, with its density function being renormalized at each step to ensure it remains valid. Normalizing flows have been used particularly in work on generative models. As you've likely seen, generative modeling is all about learning to approximate some observed data distribution, say of natural images or speech audio. And these can be used to sample new data points with similar characteristics to the training data, conditionally complete a sample, as in image inpainting, evaluate probabilities or densities of samples and see which samples are more likely, or infer latent variables that allow us to reduce the dimensionality of the data, or expose interpretable structure that enables generating samples with specific characteristics. One way to use normalizing flows in a latent variable generative model is to parameterize the likelihood as a flow. In our framework, z will serve as a latent variable with prior p of z, and x will be the observed variable, produced by passing z through the bijective transformation f. So let's derive our maximum likelihood objective. First, we take the log of both sides, distributing the log through the product on the right-hand side. Now we know that the overall transformation f was specifically constructed to be the composition of a sequence of functions. So this log determinant term can be replaced with the sum of the log determinants of each intermediate Jacobian. This setup will allow us to directly train our model via maximum likelihood, as we can compute the log marginal likelihood exactly. Now this differs from some other prominent deep generative models such as variational autoencoders, known as VAEs, and generative adversarial networks, known as GANs. In the VAE case, we can only approximate a lower bound on the log likelihood, known as the evidence lower bound, or elbow, and this is what we optimize during training. In GANs, we actually avoid evaluation of the likelihood altogether, and instead optimize a minimax objective involving the discriminator and the generator. In addition, the flow-based framework allows for exact posterior inference. In fact, the invertibility of f guarantees that we can find the unique z that generates a given x. With a VAE, we have an encoder network parameterizing an approximate posterior, as computing the actual posterior is intractable. And in a standard GAN, there is no encoder for inferring the latents, and the generator is not guaranteed to have full support over the data. Now, we have this sequence of potentially high-dimensional bijective functions whose Jacobian determinants we need to be able to compute. But this can get expensive. The basic trick often used is to ensure that the Jacobian is triangular. This is because the determinant of a triangular matrix is just the product of the diagonal elements, so we don't have to take into account any of the off-diagonal elements. For example, in the paper NICE, Nonlinear Independent Components Estimation, the authors ensure that the Jacobian of each transformation is triangular via what are called coupling layers. Let Z be the input to a coupling layer. We first partition Z into two subsets, for instance, two contiguous subvectors. For the first subset, we simply apply the identity, copying over the elements to the same positions in the layer's output x. To get the remaining portion of x, we use two functions, m and g. M takes as input the first subset of z, and then the output of m and the second subset of z serve as inputs for g. We can look at the Jacobian of this transformation. Because elements in the first subset are not affected by elements in the second, we end up with all zeros in the upper right block. And with the identity in the upper left, we'll just need to make sure that the lower right block is lower triangular to ensure that the full Jacobian is triangular. The lower left block will have no restrictions. And because elements in the first subset are left unchanged by a coupling layer, we'll also need to alternate roles between the two subsets as we compose multiple coupling layers together. As for inverting this transformation, well, we can of course invert the identity portion. But what about the second part, this g function? Well, basically g is just required to be invertible with respect to its first argument given the second, since we can trivially recover its second argument. In the paper NICE, g is kept simple and just returns the sum of its two arguments to form an additive coupling layer. Recent papers have a bit more sophisticated transformations, but the basic idea is the same. So no matter how complex the function m is, say it's a deep neural network, the overall transformation is still easily invertible and its Jacobian determinant is simple to compute. In fact, these additive coupling layers have a unit Jacobian determinant, so they neither contract nor expand space, and even a composition of several of these preserves volume. But we actually don't want this restricted behavior. The model should be able to perform expansions and contractions at different points in space to allow for more flexibility when matching the data distribution. As we start with a simple Gaussian, we won't be able to model multimodal distributions without this capability. The model should be free to increase the amount of latent space used to represent high-density regions of the data. So as we decode from latents to data, the first transformation, before the coupling layers, will consist of a diagonal scaling matrix S. The authors of NICE give the intuition that S is essentially learning a manifold of the data. The smaller the scaling factor, the less important the latent dimension. In the limit, as an element of S approaches 0, the corresponding latent dimension is effectively removed. The overall objective now consists of summing the difference between the log probability of each element of F inverse of X and the log of the absolute value of the corresponding scaling factor in S. Now, even if the model is allowed to dampen certain dimensions, it might seem pretty limiting to always have a latent space of equal dimensionality to the data, which is required for a differentiable bijection. What if we want to explicitly enforce a smaller latent dimensionality? Well, in the paper Density Estimation Using Real NVP, a follow-up work to NICE, a multi-scale architecture is used that allows different sets of latent variables to correspond to different resolutions. So latents corresponding to finer details can be optionally left out during inference. Now, we've considered a case where we parameterize a likelihood function as a flow, but they're applicable to other scenarios where we'd like to form a richer distribution. For example, we might parameterize the approximate posterior in a VAE with a flow to allow for better inference. So instead of, say, restricting the approximate posterior to be a Gaussian with diagonal covariance, we can use a normalizing flow to transform this initial distribution into something more flexible. We can also view some autoregressive models as normalizing flows. Consider a model that sequentially samples each pixel in an image, conditioned on the previous ones according to some fixed ordering. If the conditional densities are Gaussians, we can view the sampling noise at each step as a latent variable. This gives us an invertible model. We can obtain a unique latent vector for an observation, given model parameters. Now, while density evaluation can be easily parallelized here, the sequential sampling means we can't generate new examples efficiently. Combining this framework with what are known as inverse autoregressive flows helps address this. So normalizing flows are a neat tool to have when we'd like to tractably handle complex probability distributions. And we only touched on a few of the ways of using them in this video. In the description, I've included links for learning more about normalizing flows and their origin, as well as some recent papers worth checking out. Thanks for watching.